If there's one thing I've learned since starting this YouTube channel almost 4 years ago, it's that people on YouTube love goalkeepers. Well, that and the fact that QAnon conspiracy theorists will reach every corner of the web, even if that's just the comments section of a video about the rise and fall of MCCARTHY. But it's the goalkeeper lesson that's more pertinent to today's video. With that in mind, and twin with the fact that I have seen a number of requests for it, and have already made a video ranking every Premier League number 2, I decided it was time to bite the bullet and attempt to rank the league's number 1s from 1st to 20th. Now, I must admit, this was remarkably difficult, not least in terms of deciding what you're actually ranking them on. If you look at form this season, ALISSON wouldn't trouble the top 3. If you look at career peaks, David De Gea would be way out in top spot. Clearly, I don't think either of those would be a fair reflection of either player's talents, so I've tried to rank each goalkeeper based upon how good I think they are right now. Not how good their current form is, not how good they once were, just how good I think they are actually right now. Apologies for the long-winded introduction, but whilst I'm sure there'll be plenty of disagreement regardless, I think it's important to emphasise that criteria. Oh, and for the purposes of this video, a club's number 1 is the keeper who has played the most minutes for them this season. Without further ado then, here is how I would rank every Premier League number 1 right now, based on current ability from least to most brilliant. 20th. Aaron Ramsdale. It's harsh, but someone has to come last, and for me, it is Aaron Ramsdale. Of course, it's worth bearing in mind that Ramsdale is only 22 years old, so the fact that he has already made more than 100 first-team appearances at all, most of which have come in the Premier League, is very impressive, and I still think he can become a very good goalkeeper. A graduate of the Sheffield United Academy, Ramsdale left the Blades to join Bournemouth before returning to Bramall Lane after the Cherries were relegated. He was named as AFC Bournemouth's Supporters Player of the Year last season, which was a mark of the high regard he was held in, and why he commanded an £18.5 million fee. Unfortunately, Ramsdale's return to Sheffield United has coincided with a pretty dreadful season for the club. It looks certain that he will suffer a second successive relegation this season, and I doubt there'll be a transfer to another Premier League team at the end of this one. 19th. Sam Johnstone. The only Premier League number 1 to have conceded more goals than Aaron Ramsdale this season, I think we can safely say that Sam Johnstone isn't solely responsible for West Bromwich Albion's shoddy defensive record. Although he recently turned 28, Johnstone only played Premier League football for the first time this season. I must admit, I have been impressed, even if his 19th place ranking doesn't really reflect that fact. I think he is still improving, and that he's been one of West Brom's better players this season. I just also think there are 18 Premier League number 1s who are better than him. 18th. Alex McCarthy. This video has begun with 3 successive Englishmen, but Alex McCarthy is the only one of the trio to have actually won an England cap. The former Reading star won his one and only England cap to date back in 2018, after he usurped Fraser Forster at St Mary's and enjoyed a fine period of form on the South Coast. McCarthy actually won both Southampton's Players and Supporters Player of the Year awards in 2017-18, and he has been the club's number 1 ever since. 3 years on from that breakthrough, things have almost turned full circle this month, as McCarthy has been dropped following a handful of errors and replaced by Fraser Forster. With that in mind, I think 18th is as generous as I can be. 17th. Robert Sanchez. One of a number of really talented young Premier League goalkeepers, I suspect Robert Sanchez didn't expect to be playing first-team football quite as soon as he is doing at Brighton and Hove Albion. Signed by the Seagulls from Levante as a 15-year-old in a move that would no longer be possible post-Brexit, Sanchez honed his skills on loan at Rochdale and Forest Green Rovers in each of the last 2 seasons. It was the faltering form of Matt Ryan that saw him handed a starting berth by Graham Potter earlier this season, and Sanchez has grabbed it with both hands, if you'll pardon the pun. Aged 23 and 6'6" tall, Sanchez has held his own up to this point, and he even received his first call-up to the Spanish national team just last week. He looks to have a bright future, and his excellent distribution should bode well with the style of play he'll be required to play at both club and international level. 16th. KARL DARLOW. To be honest, I think that Martin Dubravka is a better goalkeeper than KARL DARLOW, and he would likely have finished a few players higher than Darlow, but it is Darlow who has played more minutes this season, partly due to Dubravka's injury setbacks, sees our inclusion from St James's Park. With that being said, Darlow has been pretty impressive this season, particularly just before the new year, and most notably in Newcastle's draw with Liverpool. Signed by Newcastle from Nottingham Forest in 2014, Darlow has already played more games in the Premier League this season alone than he had done in all seasons up to this point. 15th, Jordan Pickford. Maybe the toughest keeper to rank in the Premier League, though there is some stiff competition on that front, Jordan Pickford can be the best goalkeeper in the league one week and the worst the next. That's not so bad with a tricky wide man or a flair player, but really, you want a bit more consistency from your number one. A controversial choice as Gareth Southgate's number one for England, it must be said that Pickford has been much more consistent at international level and that he has very rarely let the Three Lions down. With that being said, you never feel wholly at ease when the Englishman is between the sticks. And with that in mind, I can't put him any higher than 15th despite his undoubted talent and often outstanding reflexes. 14th, ILLAN MESLIER. Another really difficult player to rank. I think Leeds United fans have every right to get excited about ILLAN MESLIER. In fact, I'd go a bit further than that and say that for just £5 million, he could prove to be an outstanding bargain. MESLIER was thrown into the first team at Leeds following Kiko Casillas' suspension for racial abuse, but to be quite frank, I thought he immediately looked like a more impressive shot stopper than the former Real Madrid man. MESLIER only turned 21 this month, prior to which he had become the youngest goalkeeper to reach 8 league clean sheets during the Premier League era. His potential is frightening, and it's only his handling, communication and distribution, all of which just requires some work, that prevent him from ranking any higher just yet. 13th, Vicente Guaita. There wasn't much fanfare or press attention when Crystal Palace signed Vicente Guaita from Getafe on a free transfer in 2018, unlike when the Eagles signed Steve Mandanda. Also unlike Mandanda though, Guaita hasn't been rubbish. Whilst his signing might not have made many headlines, the experienced Spaniard had long been a consistent and highly regarded shot stopper in La Liga. An old school continental keeper who loves to punch the ball and possesses an impressive long throw that can launch a counter-attack, Guaita has played very well in his 88 appearances for Palace. And to be honest, there was little to split him and the man up next, in my eyes. 12th, ALPHONSE AREOLA. If Fulham are going to leapfrog Newcastle United and survive in the Premier League this season, I suspect their loanees will play a pretty seminal role. Arguably not more so than ALPHONSE AREOLA, on loan from PSG, who was an excellent piece of recruitment by the Cottagers. In fairness, the club are reported to be paying 100% of Areola's almost £150,000 a week wages, so you would expect a half-decent keeper at that price, but that is at least what they have got. The thrice-capped 28-year-old Frenchman spent last season on loan at Real Madrid, where he made 9 appearances as Thibaut Courtois' deputy, but he's very much been Fulham's number one this season. Whenever I've seen him this season, he has pulled off some genuinely outstanding saves, but I'm aware that he has made 1 or 2 mistakes in games that I've missed, so I won't get too carried away and he finds himself firmly in mid-table. 11th, HUGO LLORIS. I can understand why this might seem harsh on a World Cup winning goalkeeper who has won 120 caps for the best national team on the planet right now, and a few years ago I would have ranked him much higher. To be clear, I think HUGO LLORIS has been an excellent servant to Tottenham Hotspur for the vast majority of his more than 350 appearances for the club, and he was outstanding for Lyon prior to that. However, for the last 2, maybe even 3 seasons, it would be fanciful to say that LLORIS has been among the best keepers in the league. He has still played very well on occasion, but he has also been markedly inconsistent and has dropped a number of clangers. With all that taken into account, I think 11th is about right, and I'd be surprised if he was still Tottenham's number 1 next season. 10th, Rui Patricio. We see 2 undisputed long-term number 1s for 2 of Europe's footballing powerhouses at international level in quick succession, as Rui Patricio comes out 1 place ahead of HUGO LLORIS. Capped 92 times by Portugal and now playing for Portugal FC at club level in the Premier League, the Sporting Club de Portugal legend is a very experienced and capable number 1. Brought in as a replacement for the very unfortunate John Ruddy, Patricio has once again proved to be a safe pair of hands at Molineux. A well-rounded keeper who still has outstanding reflexes, Patricio breeds confidence throughout the back 4 in front of him, which is the mark of a good number 1. 9th, MENDY. Joining Jordan Pickford and ILLAN MESLIER in the tough-to-rank bracket, Édouard Mendy is partly difficult to rank due to the rapid nature of his rise. An incredibly late bloomer, Mendy was on unemployment benefits at the age of 22 after leaving third-tier Cherbourg, and he very nearly retired at that age. After a year without a club, he began to train with Marseille's reserves, and a year later, he was signed by Rennes. It wasn't until the age of 26 that Mendy first played top-flight football, and in 2019, he joined Rennes. Statistically one of the best keepers in Europe last season, Chelsea signed Mendy at the start of this season for £20 million to replace Kepa Arrizabalaga. The first international for an African national team to be the first choice goalkeeper in the division for almost a decade, Mendy is able to dominate his 6-yard box due to his size, he has brilliant reflexes, and he's not afraid to share his mind with the defenders in front of him. 8th. Bernd Leno. I am a big fan of Bernd Leno, but I think it is pretty common knowledge that he hasn't been at his best this season. Prior to his injury last season, he was probably Arsenal's most important player, or at the very least, second only to Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. The former Bayer Leverkusen star is unfortunate to represent a national team that has two genuinely world-class goalkeepers, who have restricted him to just 8 caps. Nonetheless, and in spite of his slight drop-off this season, I still think Leno is worthy of a spot in 8th, which is more than you can say for Arsenal at this moment in time, and it's very tight between him and the next 4 or 5 inclusions in truth. 7th. LUKASZ Fabianski. I have been singing LUKASZ Fabianski's praises for a long time on this channel and beyond, and I still think he's grossly underrated by many. Despite picking up the unfortunate nickname of Flappy Hansky during his time at Arsenal, Fabianski was almost immediately superb following his 2014 transfer to Swansea City. That is almost 7 years ago now. 7 years of consistent, excellent performances, which have seen him win both Swansea and West Ham's Player of the Year awards. He takes 7th, but it could very easily have been 6th. 6th. KASPER SCHMEICHEL. It can't be easy growing up in the shadow of the man most consider to be the greatest goalkeeper of the Premier League era, and it wasn't a straightforward journey to the top for the Danish international. He left Man City to join Notts County when they were in League 2, then Leeds United in the Championship, before signing for Leicester City whilst the Foxes were also still in the Championship. There was a time when Schmeichel had outstanding reflexes, but could sometimes be a little suspect to flapping at balls into the box, but I think he's pretty much ironed out most of the obvious deficiencies in his game now. Aged 34, I think Schmeichel is probably close to the peak of his powers right now, and he was named as the 3rd best goalkeeper in the world at FIFA's The Best Awards in 2018, following his fine form for Denmark at the 2018 World Cup. 5th. Emiliano Martinez. Potentially beating the likes of Pickford, MESLIER and Mendy into top spot, as the toughest goalkeeper to rank of all, Emiliano Martinez has been so brilliant for such a short amount of time that I suspect if you asked 100 football fans who watch the Premier League regularly where they would rank him, you'd have some putting him in top spot and some who wouldn't even include him among their top half. I'm sticking true to my criteria of ranking purely on ability, not form, but ability right now, and on that front, I think there are a few better in the division. You feared for Arsenal when Bernd Leno got injured last season, but if anything, Martinez was even more impressive. Aston Villa took a bit of a gamble that Martinez could maintain that form over the summer, and it certainly looks to have paid off. I think a case could be made for Martinez having been the best goalkeeper in the league this season, and he comes 5th in my overall rankings. 4th. Nick Pope. Outside of that truly elite bracket of Neuer, Oblak, ter Stegen and co, I genuinely believe that Nick Pope is one of the best goalkeepers in Europe. Only Emiliano Martinez has a higher save percentage than Pope this season in the Premier League, and I'm pretty sure I saw a graphic not long ago that showed Jan Oblak was the only man with a better save percentage in Europe's top 5 leagues across the last 3 seasons. In a world of sweeper keepers, Pope is very old school, or very Burnley if you like. His distribution is likely the only reason why he isn't already England's number 1, but I think he's so brilliant in terms of the fundamentals of goalkeeping that he should be regardless. In fact, in pure goalkeeping terms, when it comes to keeping the ball out of the back of his net, I think a strong case could be made for Pope being the best in the league. 3rd. David De Gea. Another nightmare to try and rank, we all know just how good David De Gea has been, and can be. At his peak, he was arguably the best goalkeeper in the world, and without doubt, the best in England. For roughly 3, maybe even 4 seasons, Manchester United bordered on one-man team territory, as De Gea's stunning reflexes and unique ability to keep the ball out of the net using his legs won them double digits in terms of points across the course of each season. The 2018 World Cup was a month to forget for De Gea, and it sparked a decline in his form at club level as well the following season. De Gea was much improved in the early parts of this season, keeping Dean Henderson at bay in terms of league selection, and he is still a very good goalkeeper, just no longer the best in the league. Second, Ederson. I don't think there is a single goalkeeper in the Premier League who hasn't had a significant dip in form at some stage, with the possible exception of Nick Pope, who is less scrutinised by virtue of the fact that he plays for a club that is under less of a spotlight than, say, Chelsea or Man City. Ederson's wobble came last season, particularly towards the end of the campaign, and continued into the early parts of this season as the citizens struggled with inconsistency. That seems like a very long time ago now, with both Ederson and his comrades having turned into an invincible force for around half the campaign. He is a shoo-in for the Golden Glove this season, but more than that, Ederson is an outstanding shot stopper who is still improving, and he has the best distribution of any keeper in world football. Top spot, Adrian. Just kidding. Top spot, Alisson Becker. I suspect you all knew what was coming, simply by process of elimination, and I don't think that this will be as uncontroversial as it would have been 12 months ago. As I said, every keeper has had patches of good and bad form in this league in recent years, and Alisson just happens to be in the midst of his bad one at this moment in time. Having looked so assured for so long between the sticks at Anfield, Alisson's demise has been symptomatic of a wider drop-off in form from the Reds this season, typified by his calamitous errors in Liverpool's 4-1 defeat to champions-elect Manchester City. That game was the opposite of everything that we have come to expect from Alisson, who has looked authoritative, consistent, and complete throughout the vast majority of his time at Liverpool, and indeed beyond. I still think he's probably the best goalkeeper in the league, all round, combining outstanding reflexes with excellent communication and distribution. So that is it for today's video. I have no doubt that you will disagree with some of my selections, but that is all part of the fun. Let us know your thoughts down below in the comments. Please do hit the like button if you enjoyed today's video, even if you didn't necessarily agree with me. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm. And make sure that you are subscribed and have notifications turned on for the one and only HITC Sevens. You can also find me on either Instagram or Twitter, or both, by the username @HITC Sevens on both, should you wish to do so.